Alright, welcome back to the channel. So it's officially 2022, and I think it's time to finally revisit Jepi. And this is becoming a super popular high-income ETF. It currently has almost $5 billion in assets under management, and the inception date of this ETF is only May of 2020, so it's not even that old, but yet it has a huge amount of assets. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So in the past 12 months, it has a total return of 21.5% with a 6.4% dividend yield, and it's issued by a very reputable name, JP Morgan. Not to mention the expense ratio is also pretty modest at 0.35%. I, of course, invest in Jepi myself, so in this video, I want to revisit this ETF, check in on it, see how it's doing, and whether or not it deserves a spot in your portfolio. And before we get started, if you guys enjoy, as always, leave the video a like, subscribe, it helps me out a lot with the YouTube algorithm, and I greatly appreciate it. But let's get into this. Okay, so the basics. Jepi is designed to provide current income while maintaining the prospects for capital appreciation. And if you talk to any dividend and income investor, this right here is usually their main goal in life. And this is another reason why Jepi is so attractive. So the first thing I want to take a deeper look into is the actual source of the income. And it says right here that it comes from option premiums and stock dividends. However, this is misleading. If we take a deeper look into the very boring and intimidating looking documents, we can get a clearer picture of what this fund is trying to do. So point one, the fund seeks to provide a majority of the returns associated with the S&P 500. Okay. Point two, it mitigates risk by focusing on low volatility stocks. And the third and final objective is the income by equity linked notes. You're going to notice when it comes to the income, it doesn't mention dividend paying companies. In fact, if we come down to this paragraph about the actual stocks, it says securities are not selected based on anticipated dividend payments. So I'm not sure why on their fact sheet they state the income is coming from both options and dividends. Technically it's true, but they do not pick stocks based off of their dividends. They pick stocks based off of their volatility level. So that's important to understand about Jepi. And here's a sample of the actual ELNs found in Jepi, and I'm looking at their semi-annual report right now. So the way you can read this is right here is the issuer of the ELNs, and you can see they rotate between a bunch of different names like TD and the Royal Bank of Canada. And they do this in order to help mitigate risk in case one of them goes bankrupt. And the reason why that's important is because the whole benefit of having ELNs versus regular call options to generate this income is that the principal used in the ELNs is supposed to be guaranteed and backed up by this company. And that's what Jepi means when they say that the ELNs have both characteristics of fixed income assets, aka bonds, as well as equities. This is the participation rate, this is the expiration date, and finally this says that the ELNs are linked to the S&P 500. So that's the underlying equity. So if I try to translate this into an English sentence and oversimplify it, it goes something like this. The Royal Bank of Canada is issuing this ELN which is linked to the S&P 500, and it has a participation rate of 62.3%, meaning that over the duration of this investment, you will participate in 62.43% of the upside, in this case of the S&P 500. That's paid to you in the form of a coupon. And finally, at the end of the duration of this ELN, you should get all of your initial principal back, much like a bond, by the Royal Bank of Canada. So Jepi has a bunch of these, 20% roughly of the portfolio, and they issue them about every week. And if we take a look at the holdings page of Jepi, here are the ELNs. But the rest of the portfolio, which is handpicked by management, is just companies from the S&P 500 that have low volatility characteristics that management thinks has good upside potential. We do have some tech names like Microsoft up here, Google. By happenstance, we also do have some dividend-paying companies like AbbVie, Lowe's, and United Health Group. But again, the dividend characteristics are not a major factor when screening for these equities. It's mostly low volatility because the income comes from those ELNs. But I mean, overall, I'm a pretty big fan of the equities here. We have MasterCard, Procter & Gamble, Comcast, Target, NextEra Energy, PepsiCo, UPS, all pretty solid names. Okay, so that's the nitty-gritty of how Jepi operates as an ETF. Now the next question is, does it deserve a spot in your portfolio? So currently for me, Jepi is just one of 3 income sources for my portfolio, followed by Divo and my recreation of XYLG. Jepi had great performance over the past 1 year, but so did these other options. In fact, in terms of just price appreciation, both Divo and XYLG did better. And they all have a very similar dividend. XYLG and Divo are about 5%, and Jepi does technically have the advantage of around 6 to 7%. So I think without question, Jepi is a high quality income focused ETF, but it does offer its own unique set of pros and cons, and you have to decide whether or not it fits into your investing strategy. And here's the pros and cons as I see it. So the primary source of income, as mentioned, is call options, but the thing that's unique about Jepi is that it wraps them up into these ELNs that we discussed. And that's supposed to make these options quote unquote safer. And that safety is supposed to come from the principal protection characteristics of ELNs, but that leads to my first con, which is ELNs are still unproven. This ETF came into existence in May of 2020, and it's the only ETF that I'm aware of that uses ELNs. The next pro of Jepi is that it focuses on low volatility stocks from the S&P 500. Now this does come down to personal preference because volatility goes both ways, to the upside and the downside. And there's also no guarantee that low volatility stocks in the past will be low volatility in the future. The next con of Jepi is that it's actively managed. In fact, it's managed by these two guys right here. It's fully at their discretion and their quote unquote proprietary research process. But my final major pro here is that so far, Jepi has had great total returns with an extremely high dividend yield. I recently got a comment on the channel asking why I have so much exposure to the S&P 500 in my portfolio. Because my primary investment is the S&P 500. I have half exposure to the equities, and half of it is covered by at-the-money covered calls to generate me income. But of course, I also have Jepi, which is based around the S&P 500. And the reason why I do this, and Jepi has a place currently in my portfolio, is all about the ELNs. I kind of view them as a hedge because both my other income sources, Divo and XYLG, use standard covered calls. And I don't know what's going to happen in the future, and there's a possibility that ELNs will prove to be more effective. So that's why I hold Jepi in my portfolio, for those unique income characteristics. So it's a great ETF in a sea of other great ETFs like XYLG and Divo. So definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you're still watching and enjoyed, hit the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.